Chapter 3. A Hero's Welcome. It was nearly noon when the warriors were finally ready to set off for Argan. The travelers journeyed on horseback, giving their weary legs a welcome rest. As he rode through the golden forest, Cerberus's mind was busy picturing the reception awaiting them in Argan. For once in his life, he would not be known as Prince Cerberus, son of Eluthian. It was not as though that was a bad thing, but it was a title he possessed merely by being born. He had done nothing to earn it. Now, he had a title that he had rightfully earned. He would be known as Cerberus the Brave, Knight of the Teluvian army. He reached to his chest and felt the fang of the Devordian wolf he had slain. It hung from his neck like a trophy, as it did on the other warriors. Here was proof of his courage, a reminder of his victory over fear. No longer would he be content to stay within the sheltered realm of his father's castle. Adventure was in his blood now. Wherever Dyaxes went, he would follow, no matter how great the danger. The glorious city of Argan was decked out in all its splendor in honor of the return of its finest warriors. Many of the exiles had returned, and they had been hard at work removing the mark the dragon had left on the city. Beautiful banners of burgundy and gold hung against the snowy white walls of the castle. Lookouts were posted in the high towers at the city gate to watch for the travelers. When the heroes came into view, trumpets blared. Even from outside the city, one could hear the cheers of the people as they anticipated the entry of the warriors. The mighty gates of Argan swung open, clearing the way for Dyaxes, who was leading the others. The ovation they had received in Telesway was nothing compared to the warm welcome given to them by the hosts of the royal city. Golden leaves rained down on the heroes from the rooftops above as they proceeded onto the king's castle. Eluthian waited in the courtyard, ready to praise the warriors. As Ectheon entered the royal garden, he smiled in recognition. It was not due to his father, but rather two other faces. His heart warmed as he saw his mother, Queen Gwendolen, and his sister, Lydia, who had returned from Verilion. Both possessed exceeding beauty, a quality Dyaxes noted immediately. "Welcome back, brave warriors," Eluthian said. "I am glad to see you have returned safely. If you have not noticed by now, you are heroes. Now I am going to make it official." The king drew his sword as the warriors kneeled before him. He touched the shoulder of each one with his blade as he spoke their names in turn. "As king of the beautiful realm of Teluvia, I grant the following warriors the title of Knight, as reward for the courage they have displayed: Sir E. Adril and Sir Arlen. Sir Diolus, son of my beloved brother Seleutheus, and my dear sons, Sir Ectheon and Sir Cerberus. As knights, you will serve under the command of the noble Dyaxes. Rise now and serve him well." The trumpet sounded again, proclaiming the new knights. The noise was answered by cheers from the masses gathered outside the palace. "Now, Dyaxes," Eluthian said, "I believe some introductions are in order." He turned to his wife and said, "My dear, this is Dyaxes the Dragon Slayer. Dyaxes, I present to you my lovely wife, Queen Gwendolen." "Lovely indeed," the warrior said, as he bowed and kissed the queen's hand. "Your beauty puts the gilded trees to shame, your highness." The queen smiled. "I have heard a great deal about you, noble Dyaxes. Thanks to you, I now sit safely beside my husband. You are truly a remarkable person. Now, I would like to present my daughter, Princess Lydia," the king announced. The striking young lady blushed as Dyaxes kissed her hand. Her hair was long and golden, like her mother's. Her eyes, bright and blue, sparkled like the rushing waters of the Norsus River. "I can see that beauty runs in the family," Dyaxes said, his face displaying a charming grin. "You are too kind, sir," Lydia spoke in a soft, shy voice. Never had she seen a man like him. His looks were dark and handsome. He was so much more mature than the elven males she knew. Next to him, Ectheon, the eldest of her brothers, looked like a young boy. But it was the man who stood behind the commander that grabbed her attention. He had fair human features, with the slightest hint of elven blood. As Lydia considered his appearance, she decided that it was his eyes that drew her to him. She had seen such eyes before in the faces of diplomats from the northern kingdom of Nordrius, but never had they contained such depth. There was wisdom in the Adral stare, a hint of the understanding one gains only through numerous years of triumph and tragedy. So strange that such ancient eyes could be found in the face of a man just entering the prime of his life. Lydia could not help but wonder what those eyes had seen to have aged them so. "Come now," the king said. "A feast has been prepared in honor of you, Teluvia's newest heroes." The warriors sat at the king's table, as they all would do from then on. During the meal, Ectheon took the lead in describing their daring quest. When he came to the part where he was bitten by a wolf, his father's eyebrows raised and his mother gasped. A look of worry crept over Dyax's face. "No one told me that you had been injured," the king said in a tone of concern as he looked over at the commander. "Yes," Ectheon continued, "it bit me in the leg. The pain was terrible, but I am fine now, thanks to Eadril." "Well, I will not take complete credit for your recovery," Eadril said modestly. "All I did was clean and dress the wound. You were just very lucky. Luck may have played its part, but it is your skill and quick thinking I am grateful for, Sir Eadril," the king said sincerely. "I know this is a celebration, but there are some pressing matters that I feel need to be addressed," Dyaxis interjected. "What is it you wish to discuss?" the king asked. "As you know," the commander began, "the dragon left the army in shambles. Not only did it kill our best soldiers, but it destroyed almost all our weaponry. Most of the arms we had were remnants from the war with Devordia," the king explained. "They were made by the dwarves of the kingdom of Marchand." "Then it seems we must go to the dwarves once again," Dyaxis said. "I am afraid that would be a most difficult, if not impossible task," the king said. "I am not very familiar with the mountain folk, but I do know that Marchand no longer exists as it did in the days of my father, if it exists at all any longer. After the war between the elves, the dwarves became reclusive and settled deep within the White Mountains. It seems that after the Devordians betrayed them, the dwarves lost faith in all forest dwellers and broke all ties with the kingdoms of the woods. The dwarves could prove to be valuable allies, Your Highness," Dyaxis noted. "It would be wise to regain their confidence. Such a reconciliation would be helpful, but I fear it will not be easily obtained," Eluthian warned. "However, if you have a plan, I am willing to go along with it. With your permission, I would like to go visit the dwarves in person as a gesture of goodwill," the commander requested. "Finding them will be most difficult," the king said, "but it seems with you, anything is possible." "I appreciate your confidence in me, sire," Dyaxis said. "I will not fail you." "May I go with you?" Cerebus asked eagerly. "I expect all of my knights to accompany me," Dyaxis said, "unless, of course, your father objects." Commander looked over at the king. A shadow of concern had crept over Eluthian's face, much like the one that appeared when Dyaxis first spoke of the journey into Devordia. As a king, he knew very well the need to maintain a well-equipped army, even in a time of peace. The frightfully sudden attack of the Black Dragon was proof of that. He also realized that Dyaxis could not be expected to search for the dwarves on his own, even though he was probably capable of doing so. After all, what was the point of appointing knights, if not for an endeavor such as this? But as a father, Eluthian held grave reservations about sending his sons on a mission that seemed to be, in his mind at least, rather dangerous. Eluthian was a passive person. The thought of war frightened him. It was not the fear of a coward. Rather, it was the fear of a person who understood the horrors of war. The king looked at his sons. How eager they were. Dyaxis had given them a taste of adventure, and now they wanted more. Eluthian had hoped they would share his view of combat, but that was too much to ask. They were young and naive. Above all, they were restless. Eluthian knew he could not stand in their way any longer. To do so would only cause them to resent him. "If you feel that it is necessary, then so be it," the king said in a voice that did not conceal his displeasure over the idea. "Can I come with too?" young Prince Earl asked hopefully. Eluthian was about to voice his objection when Eadril spoke on the lad's behalf. "If I may speak, sire, I am from that area. I assure you, it is not nearly as dangerous as the territory from which your other two sons safely returned. Errol is young, but he is not a child. If you continue to treat him as such, even as his brothers become heroes, I fear he may grow rebellious and set off to perform heroic deeds on his own. Would it not be better to give him a taste of adventure in a situation such as this, where you know he will have competent warriors around to protect him? Your words are wise, Eadril, the king admitted. They speak to a truth that I, as a father, have been loath to recognize. It is my wish to keep Errol safe, but I would not have him grow to resent his brothers or me. You may go on this quest, Errol, but you must promise to do nothing that would endanger yourself or your companions. I promise, Errol said happily. And Eadril, since you have taken it upon yourself to speak on Errol's behalf, I hold you responsible for his safety, the king said seriously. I ask you for your word that you will protect him at all costs, exchanging your life for his if needed. You have my word, Eadril vowed. After the feast, Errol stood on the balcony overlooking the courtyard. He watched as his brothers and the other young warriors reenacted the battle with the wolves. How he wished he had been there. Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He spun around to see who it was. Eadril. The prince exclaimed, "What are you doing here?" "I thought that you would be down there with the others." "I would have thought the same of you," the warrior replied. "I feel out of place down there," the young elf muttered. "I know Dyaxes means well, but sometimes I get the feeling he views me as a nuisance. He never would have spoken up for me the way you did tonight. Dyaxes has been given the heavy responsibility of rebuilding your father's army," Eadril pointed out. "If I were you, I would not take his neglect personally. I am sure once everything is settled, he will begin to show you the same attention he has shown your brothers. However, until that time comes, I would be happy to train you." "Really?" Errol asked with considerable excitement. "Shall we give it a go?" Eadril said as he drew his sword. "Hey, you are left-handed just like me," Errol noticed. "Yes, and it is a rare thing, especially among swordsmen," Eadril said. "There are some who say left-handedness is a sign of evil," Errol said. "There are others who say it is a sign of genius," Eadril countered. "I do not know about you, but I am inclined to believe them." Errol let out a laugh, to which Eadril replied in a jesting tone, "Do you mock me, sir? Why, I will have your head, I will." With that, the sparring began. Errol showed great ability for a lad of his age, but it was obvious that Eadril was only using a small portion of his skill. The match came to an end several minutes later, when Eadril displayed his true talent with one quick stroke. The wolf fang necklace given to Errol by his brothers fell to the ground. Amazingly, the young elf's neck was left unmarked. Errol stood in wonder of the expert swordsman. "A true warrior does not need to wear such trophies," Eadril said, referring to the tooth of the Devordian beast. "The mark of your kingdom is a more appropriate symbol." "You are even better than Dyaxes," Errol remarked in a tone of astonishment. "Perhaps I am," Eadril said with a grin, "and you could be too, with enough practice." "Yeah, right," Errol laughed. "Do not underestimate yourself," Eadril said in a serious tone. "Pessimism only brings defeat. If you have confidence, you can achieve any goal." The warrior gave the prince a pat on the head and then turned and walked away. Errol stood alone, pondering his new friend's words. In the courtyard below, the young warriors continued to prance about like a group of rogues. They still appeared to retain the rush of adrenaline from their first true battle. Dyaxes looked on as Cerberus and Ectheon battled Diolas and Arlan. How they had changed in just a few days. They were traveling at a rapid pace from adolescence to adulthood. Their experience in the dark woods of Devordia had boosted their confidence enormously. In fact, it may have made them a bit cocky. But most of all, it drew them closer to Dyaxes, which was just what the commander wanted. Just as the adventure had drawn Ectheon and Cerberus closer to Dyaxes, it widened the gap between Errol and the commander. Then suddenly, Eadril comes along and gains the confidence of not only the prince, but the king as well. Dyaxes viewed the warrior's motives with great suspicion. What were the reasons behind Adril's sudden friendship with young Errol? Was the compassion he showed for the prince sincere? Perhaps it was, but Dyaxes suspected that there were deeper motives involved. He would keep a close eye on Adril, a close eye indeed. The next morning, Dyaxes met with King Eluthian to discuss the journey. The king did not share Dyaxes' sense of urgency and questioned the need for the warriors to leave so soon after returning from the land of shadows. Perhaps his fatherly instincts were getting the better of him. Having just sent his sons into the treacherous Black Forest, Eluthian was not eager to tempt fate by allowing them to venture into the mysterious realm of the White Mountains. Granted, it was not as perilous a place as Devordia, but it was dangerous territory nonetheless. "Are you sure you must go so soon?" the king asked Dyaxes. "Why, only yesterday you returned from your journey into the land of shadows. Why not rest for a while longer and then go?" "Your Majesty, without weapons, our nation is most vulnerable," the commander warned. "I did not want to say anything in front of the others, but I fear trouble might be brewing." "What is this threat of which you speak?" the king asked with great concern. He put aside his fatherly scheming as he listened to Dyax's words. There was a genuine tone of urgency in the commander's voice. "I have been witness to some disturbing events during the travels that eventually brought me here," Dyaxes explained. "Our neighbors to the west, in Ursulus, have come under new leadership. It seems King Ulrich has died under highly suspicious circumstances, leaving his overly ambitious brother, Urkai, in power. My sources tell me the new king has his sights set on expanding his kingdom. Ulrich's daughter came here not long ago, appealing for assistance on behalf of her brother. However, our conflict with the dragon made it impossible to help." "But surely Urkai would not attack Teluvia," Eluthian said. "I would not put anything past this man," Dyaxes warned. "He's already trying to drive out our elven neighbors, the Elcadians. I doubt he will be content to stop there." "Yes, I suppose you are right," the king agreed. "I am grateful that you have been keeping up with events outside this kingdom. Now I see why we must be prepared. I will spend the remainder of this week organizing an army from the able-bodied elves that have returned to the kingdom," the commander said. "In the absence of substantial training, they will be a far cry from true soldiers, and considering their flight from the danger posed by the dragon, I must question their courage. But alas, our options are few, and our odds will be even worse if these new soldiers are not properly equipped. With this in mind, I must leave as soon as possible. I just hope nothing happens while I am gone." "As do I," the king said gravely.